We subtitled this, Leaving Your Chapter in Better Financial Condition. How many of you came in with a negative balance? One? In the last group we had a few more than that. That's good. Then the rest of your chapters did a great job. Your job should be to leave them with in the plus column this year, and the rest of you should be thinking about how you can leave more money in your treasuries, because that's one way you fund your projects, is by the money that was left for you. Now, if you were left $10, that's not a lot to begin with. Resources. Where can you go to get money? And one of the first things that we list is student government. How many of you get money from student government one way or another? That's a lot of chapters. Those of you that can't or don't get money from student government, look around at the people that raise their hands. Raise your hands again. Talk to them and ask them, what they get money for and how that happens. Those of you that aren't getting money from student government, is there a reason why? Are you restricted? Why? Or do you get...
Our student government will only fund organizations that don't discriminate on entry. So because board doesn't accept everyone who wants to be a part of it, we can't get funding.
So obviously that's a problem. However, one of the members in the last group said, well, but they will give us money to do an all-campus event that's open to the entire campus. So do some creative thinking about it. Any other reasons why student government won't fund you?
It's a selective society.
Right. Your membership isn't open to the entire campus, so they won't fund you. One of the young members in the other room said that because student government, they would only fund projects within the student government area, and student organizations were in a different part of the university. And that's the first time I'd heard that. I was like, well, that's interesting. So if your student government doesn't fund you, then maybe you can get money from other parts on your campus. My husband happens to be a dean.
Yeah, we have ACFE. I think that's, you go through the deans. Is that what you're referring to?
No, my husband's dean of engineering, and if they need funding for a project, they can go to the deans and get money. But yeah, if you've got an activity fee that goes to the chapters, student organizations, yes. Any other funding that's campus resources? So don't not ask if you need funding. How many of you got funding to come to the conference from your student government or campus? So that's, think about that for next year. Ask them how they got here. So student organizations, most of you have a business office, and that should be an office that you visit and ask some questions. They're going to provide some resources for you. Probably auditing your books would be one of them. They do some other things for you, and the national office provides resources. We'll talk a little bit later about grants, but at this point in time, I want to talk to you about the IRS. How many of you have gotten letters from the IRS saying you haven't filed your taxes? Oh, none of you. That's good. I've gotten a whole passel of them. Mortarboard files for the organization as a whole, unless you make more than $25,000 a year. Then you have to file your own taxes. But Mortarboard is a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and the umbrella organization files the taxes. So if you get one of those letters from the IRS, send it on to Jane. And she corresponds with the IRS and takes care of that for you. So, we're clear, we don't have to do it. About 3 years ago, they changed the regulations, and that's why we're all getting these letters, and I'm surprised none of you have them. One of the young men in the last room had one that was 6 years old. He said, what should I do about it? I said, send it to Jane. How many of you have accounts on campus? Your business accounts are on campus. How many of you are required to keep them on campus? Most of you. How many of you have off-campus accounts? A few of you. What are the advantages of having an off-campus account? Huh?
No red tape you have to get through.
No red tape. And the downside of that is?
Sketchy.
No oversight, or you have to implement your own oversight. Yeah, exactly. I think that's, the pros and cons of off-campus, if you're allowed, versus on-campus is the oversight and how much you have to go to do it. However, if you've got an on-campus account, you probably are getting tax-free. You have a tax ID. Each one of your chapters has a tax ID, and some of your states recognize this for sales tax purposes. So if you buy supplies for your chapter, you can buy them tax-free, which may save you 10% in some states. So if you've got an on-campus account, that's going to happen automatically. If you're off-campus, you're probably going to have to force it to happen. Any comments about on-campus versus off-campus? So if you're allowed to, and maybe this is the right place, Denise, to talk about the context of your institution.
Okay. Just real briefly, as we're talking this afternoon, think about, as you're listening to different ideas and talking to each other over the course of the conference, think about whether, is this going to work on my campus? Although we are all in this room from larger schools, there are still quite a few differences amongst us. So the institution that I represent, Northern Illinois University, is a campus of about 23,000 students. It's a comprehensive public university. We do not get funding from the Student Government Society. The chapter does all of its own fundraising and so forth. And think about your relationship also with the institution. Do you have close ties, maybe through your advisor or through a particular office that you're connected with? Or, and do you have an alumni chapter in your area? Because that can be an excellent source of support and sometimes funding as well. So think about the context in which you operate. Think about the size of your chapter. Some fundraisers are going to require more person power than others are. And just think about the environment in which you operate as we're talking through some of these ideas.
Budget, how many of you have set a budget for this year? Not many of you. How many of you plan to do a budget when you get home? Great. Because you've got all these great ideas, or will have all these great ideas from conference, and some of them are going to cost some money, some of them you can do without that. But don't forget when you're budgeting to also think about the time that you're going to be committing your members to, particularly in the fundraising area, and we're going to talk about that. So some other funding sources, chapter funds, dues. I'm almost afraid to ask now after the last session. So dues, how many of you have paid less than $100 total for your both national and local dues? How many of you paid more than $150? Oh, this group is cheap. So that's probably somewhere around $100 or less is probably a good thing to shoot for. If you didn't collect dues, no, what was it?
180.
180 is the high amount. That's why I said you guys are cheap. That's probably at the high amount, and that chapter is looking at how they can reduce that amount and do some other types of things to actually alleviate that from their members. So your goal with your dues should be not to exclude any deserving members on your campus. And certainly at $180, they ought to be thinking about scholarships and R for people who can't afford those kind of dues. If you didn't collect dues in the spring, you can collect dues in the fall. Or if you want to break it up, collect them again in the spring. So collecting dues is probably the easiest way to get funding for your chapter projects. But you've got to be aware of your members and their ability to pay. So dues is one area. Your monies that were carried over, since we only have one in the deficit range. University funds, as I mentioned, you may have different offices that are willing to fund your projects that fit with their missions. So you need to get creative. You need to know your institutions, the context, and find those things, people that will do them. Student government, as I mentioned, may not fund your organization directly, but they may fund an event that you've got planned. Your alumni are great sources, and Purdue's the only one that I know of that does the gowns, and they were in the last session. Oh, Michelle, so how does Purdue get money from their alumni? No, it's not Purdue, sorry, it's Ohio State. Ohio State solicits donations from their alumni, and they fund their gowns for initiation. So if you don't have initiation gowns, each one of their alumni members embroidered their names on the bottom of their gown, and they use them at initiation. A wonderful way to memorialize your alumni and also serve a function for your chapter. So there are other ways to involve your alumni. That's part of your programming needs, and that's one way. Soliciting money from them, some of the chapters. Do any of you have alumni chapters in your area? And what do they do for you? Hopefully
one
something.
of the ladies here, I don't really know, I'm kind of new to it all, but she's welcomed, and she's said several times she can help me in any way possible, so I'm going to take credit word for that.
Bridget. Some of the alumni at The Ohio State University, they have, used to be teas, now they're get-togethers with the collegiate chapters. They may help you fund some of your events. So if you've got an organized chapter in your area, that's great. If it's unorganized, think about your alumni programming and how you can get them to contribute to your projects. If nothing else, they can come and participate as members. Foundation grants?
Sure. I'll put in a little plug for the chapter project grants that are sponsored by the Mortarboard National Foundation. Every year we award a number of grants to chapters who apply for them. Our first deadline this coming year will be October 15th. And essentially a chapter applies for those funds, really thinks through a project that they'd like to accomplish on their campus. And it could be in the area of chapter visibility. It could be in terms of service to the campus or the community. Generally, we don't fund things like chapter t-shirts and food events and that sort of thing for the chapters. But we look at, does a chapter need a little bit of extra cash to be able to implement a program that really is worthwhile? Oftentimes, the grants that we give are focused on the national project, the literacy theme, and so forth. And oftentimes, they have a life beyond just the chapter. They're impacting the campus and the community, because one of the values of this money for a chapter is to get the word out on mortarboard, more than it currently is. And I don't know any chapter that doesn't want to improve their visibility on their campus. So that's something to consider. Amounts, vary from probably $150 to maybe $500. Usually we award in the fall. Depending on fund availability, we would also do that in the spring. So think about that as you go back to your chapters, and if you've got an idea that just looks like it might be beyond the scope of your chapter treasury to support, then think about that chapter project grant. And oftentimes we like to award those to chapters that could really use the funds to do something in a big way. So put that on your list of things to do, follow up on this fall.
So far we kind of have talked about fundraisers or gaining funds for your chapter that don't require a lot of effort. They require making those relationships and establishing them. Generally, it's a fairly easy process that you fit into. However, there are fundraisers that a lot of chapters do to fund large projects and small projects. And we grouped them into about 3 different areas. And the first ones are my favorites. The ones that don't expend much time or money, because I think time is just as important as money is to your chapters, but you get large returns. And they can be done in a day or 2 and fund the activities for your chapter for an entire year. Those are great. We're going to talk about a few of those. There are some that raise a lot of money, but generally require a lot of time, mostly up front, but you can make a lot of money. Those chapters that make more than $25,000 a year, and we do have multiple chapters that make more than that. And Rochelle, I'm going to put you on the spot when we get there. And then the last ones are the ones that are really my least favorite, and those are the ones that usually cost a lot of upfront time and money, and you don't make much when you get done. When you evaluate your fundraiser, you've made under $50, and that just isn't a good investment of your busy member times. So let's talk about some of the big money makers first, and that's where, Vishal, you'll come in. Purdue does...
Sure. And the Purdue chapter put together a method whereby every year the Purdue chapter produces what's called a motor board. So it's basically an academic year planner. Very simple concept, but motor board puts that together. Dean Schliemann worked with a lot of the bookstores, and now the bookstores sell this. We charged them, I think when I was treasurer, it was $3.50 a book, and they sold it for like $5, right? So they had a bit of a markup. The book didn't cost us $3.50; it cost us like $2 something. But a few thousand of the books get sold every year, and it's usually a huge moneymaker for our chapter. It's been a successful thing. There are a couple of companies that the national office can help put you in touch with. One of them being School Date Books, that actually does that and can get the production going for you. But again, every student at campus knows what the motor board is as a planner, and if they read a bit more, they figure out that, the motor board is actually not just the planner, but its own organization. Great visibility tool for us. We don't have to do much more beyond that to actually get our word out.
And on a campus of 30,000 students, $2 a student profit is a lot of money. So, and what do you do with that money?
Awesome programming.
Scholarships?
We have a few events that we put together. There is actually an endowed fellowship that the national office helps coordinate that the Barbara Cook chapter funds. There's scholarships on campus. We have a leadership conference that we put together. There's the volleyball tournament that was mentioned in the last session. That's something that money goes towards. We have a couple of things that we do to recognize outstanding women faculty and women staff at Purdue, as well as just a way to get freshmen and sophomores involved. We actually recognize freshman and sophomore scholar athletes. So a bunch of great programming that goes on thanks to this amazing opportunity for us. And I would actually put it in the low time commitment area too, because the first year that this was done, getting all the bookstores to sign up was a huge endeavor for the dean back then. But since then, it's kind of just been like, so how many books do you want this year to sell? And it's been kind of easy. So.
Yeah, a lot of organization and upfront time initially that the first chapter didn't get any funds from, but the second chapter does. So those are things to think about. They're talking about going electronic. So that's in the works, and if and when that happens, then all of your chapters are probably most likely going to be invited to participate. So you don't have to have Purdue's calendar. You can have your own campus calendar with your athletic events and your student affairs activities. So be watching for that. It's a, visibility. I mean, I don't think there can be every person on campus at Purdue knows what mortarboard is. It's their planner, but they also know it goes along with an organization. So think about visibility. We've got some other fundraisers. Want to talk about flower sales?
Sure. How many chapters represented here do some sort of a graduation flower sale? Oh, wow. Okay, so we probably don't have to say a whole lot about them. You could probably spend a whole session on graduation flower sales. But the chapter on my campus, Pleiades at Northern Illinois, has been doing this now for over 10 years and has a very successful relationship going, both with the university because of the exclusive rights that the chapter has developed to sell flowers at commencement, and then also with the vendor. We happen to use Blossom Express and that has been a longstanding relationship for us. We have, from time to time, bid out the flower sales because some of our local florists have expressed interest. And so maybe every 5 years or so we'll do that. In our case, it's always worked out that we've gone with Blossom Express. They've done a great job for us at a reasonable cost. And on our campus, it's sort of a win-win, certainly, I would say. It does give the chapter high visibility, and it also provides all the funding that's needed throughout the year. So the chapter does not have to worry so much about, raising money every semester. They can, once they've raised the money through their flower sales, which are twice a year, they can then really focus their attention on the theory pieces that you heard about earlier, the mission and the purpose of the organization, and those pillars of scholarship, leadership, and service. Question?
Yeah, as a school who doesn't have that program, how does it reach out the visibility to underclassmen, since those are going to be people who are going to be joining Mortarboard?
Yeah, well, there are certainly some undergraduates or underclass students who are there as part of graduation, working in various capacities and so forth, and as guests of some of the graduates as well. But I don't know that this chapter has really seen it in that light as far as the visibility to younger, to the students and the classes behind them. But by junior year, I think pretty much everybody understands that that's one of the big things that Mortarboard does. Let me just say a couple of things, and then maybe we'll want to let Chris speak about his.
Well, I'm going to address this question first
okay.
and finish on with the Blossom Express, but I know at South Alabama, and those guys are being real quiet over there, they offer a scholarship from their proceeds to a sophomore student. And that's advertised campus-wide as a Mortarboard event, so it's not directly how the sales do it, but it's the proceeds from the sales can be used for visibility.
Likewise, we do an Outstanding Junior Award too. So, there's not necessarily, the visibility I think is in maybe a different direction, and they focus other efforts on visibility
So how at
too.
such a large school, I'm sure we're all in the same boat, how do you pick one student out of a class of 3,000 plus?
Can we hold that question?
Yeah.
Still a little bit?
Yeah, sorry, I
If you don't mind. No, that's
curious as
fine,
to
that's
how it
fine.
works out.
I could just respond really quickly. For the Outstanding Junior, our chapter picks from the applicants for Mortarboard, the applications for Mortarboard members.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Let me say a couple more things, and then maybe we want Chris to speak, and then we can open up the floor for questions on any of these things. One of the pros and possible cons of something like a flower sale, which brings in about $5,000 to $6,000 each year for the chapter, which is, really, it's really adequate for what they need, and it helps, to fund other officers. I'm looking at 3 Illinois State people in front of me here, and part of this is the location, but having a well-funded treasury allows you maybe to bring more members to an event like this for leadership development too. So that's one of the ways in which we use some of that money that we make. One of the pros and cons perhaps is that every member of the new chapter has to be involved in the flower sale in some way, shape, or form. They either, receive the flowers when they come on campus because they're shipped, and then put those in water and store them, and then the next day transport them over to the arena where commencement is being held, or they're divided into teams of maybe 3 to 6 people in different stations around the arena, and they actually do the flower sales. And then of course there's a cleanup component too. So in our case, our chapter usually ranges from 40 to 65, and I think you really need to have probably a minimum of 40 people to really run the commencement sales, depending, everybody's commencement is different, and some of them have individual ceremonies by college, some of them have a larger graduation sale. So that's what I mean by context. You really have to understand how things work on your own campus, and you have to achieve that kind of exclusive right to have those flower sales. Visibility, I think, also in the sense that everybody, the faculty and the administration of the university know that this is a project that Mortar Board does. So we're maybe not hitting all of the younger students or the underclass students, but we have other audiences too that we want to achieve visibility with. I think the biggest investment of time and energy comes on the front end if a chapter is setting this up for the first time. After you've done it a few times, it can become, really quite routine. The treasurer in the Pleiades chapter is the person responsible for the flower sales. They know that when they come into the job. The dates and everything are set years in advance, so they know what they're getting into. And then really the work of the chapter comes together on the weekend of the commencements. I think one of the other pros of doing something like a flower sale is that it does bond the new members. Many of them don't know each other very well before they have to sell flowers, and then after that, they've all had that common experience, and so they seem to have gotten to know each other fairly well. I have a little handout on this, which I'll leave with Vishal, so if anybody wants to pick one up, we'll let you do that from him. But the bottom line is I've talked with chapter members, officers, and advisors of the past few years, is that it's a lot of work, it's intense work in a short amount of time, but it's worth it.
There's a flyer in the back of your notebook about Blossom Express, and I'll just add a couple things to what Denise said. If you haven't done flower sales, at least through Blossom Express, you don't take pre-orders. Lori just ships you the amount of flowers she thinks you're going to sell, and if you sell one bouquet, then you ship your percentage, you send her whatever your agreed upon percentage is, and you keep the rest. If you sell them all, that's your profit. If you don't sell any, it's her loss and not your chapters. And I think that's one of the key things is when you're looking at fundraisers, make sure that you don't make this upfront investment and then are stuck with whatever it is that you're trying to sell. So
yeah, I would second that and just say, do your research on the vendors. Some of you may have local florists who want to sponsor something like this with you. I think it's harder for them to, I think you have to be careful on that. I think that's like Blossom Express deals with so many institutions that they can afford to give you, to do this for a reasonable amount of money.
and we have another fundraiser, a brand new one. Chris, if you want to. Oh, question?
I just wanted to answer her earlier thing. Instead of doing one scholarship, we do 5 $100 scholarships to 5 sophomores.
So the visibility, like Denise said, it may not be direct, but you can use the money. And another comment back here?
I was just going to say, another good one to do for visibility's sake, it's all, and also a fundraiser, is Valentine's flower sales. Mm-hmm. Our chapter found a website called globalrose.com. You can get 100 roses for $100 and pay $1 per rose.
Contact Lori. She'll fund your fundraiser for you.
Sure, we do work with her for graduation.
She'll do Valentine's Day. Yeah, she'll do special.
Individual ones as well, though,
Yeah.
when she sends bouquets.
She may do that. Contact her and ask her what she'll do for your chapter.
So I have an opportunity for you guys to pull them together at even the freshman level. And you guys can start it actually, when school starts. So I know some of you guys start school at the end of August, beginning of September.
You're doing great.
But a couple friends of mine and I came up with the College Cookin'. It's a cookbook that you can actually do everything in your dorm room or your apartment, because I know a lot of you guys live off campus as well, so it utilizes yourself as well. But I spent 5 years in the residence halls as a hall director, so I needed something like this. It's got breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, salads, and desserts. So it's a really good way to fundraise for your chapter. Also increase visibility because it is partnered with Mortarboard, and it also tells you about Mortarboard in the back. So you can sell them as people come into the dorms during orientation. I know parents love this because it's worked on my campus. I've actually sold our little test run a couple years ago. We sold over 300 in a year. So it works. Some details, they are $5 a book, but then you can actually take them back to your campus and sell them for whatever you want. So you can sell it for $10, $15. Like I told the other section, if you sell it for $100, let me know because nice work. So example, $5, if you go order 50 books, that's $250 investment, but you sell it for $10, you can make $250 profit. So one example is we talked about budgets. You guys don't have budgets, it looks like, with the raising of the hand earlier. But create a line on your budget that is devoted to travel, so you guys can send delegates to conference and use the cookbook to fund that. So I mentioned they're $5, but if you buy 50, I'll do shipping and handling for free. But let's talk, and I can also maybe, depending on how many books you guys order, we can work out a deal as well. Because I want you guys to capitalize on a good fundraising opportunity. I brought David Coleman to the University of Montana. I had 750 people show up. I tried to increase visibility on the campus. But the reason how I got him there is fundraising. So fundraising is a huge aspect of the chapter. Like I said, I can get the books before school starts. I still have maybe a couple samples up here if you guys want any, but I also have business cards, flyers. But if you guys want to talk about this during the networking event after this, just come up to me and let me know.
Questions, other questions?
Comments, ideas?
Do we have to foot the cost up front?
That's something that we can talk about, but as of right now, yes.
Comments, other fundraisers that you guys do that you think are really good at raising a lot of money or raising visibility on your campus, or?
Have you tried things that haven't worked?
That's good.
What would you avoid?
One thing that we've done is just make grilled cheese like downtown on a weekend night, late in some public area where a lot of drunk people go.
We did some fun.
I mean, I think in one night it made like a couple $100. It's a really small upfront.
And you did this where in your city?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of friends who live downtown, so if you can just post up at their driveway or like front yard, extension cord, basically.
Private property.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the same thing. We did pancakes and bacon last spring for Mortarboard, and it made a couple $100, and but it was fun too. It's like for the chapter to get together, and it's late at night. You do it like on the corner of like one of the members, like they live in an apartment off campus, and where there's a lot of parties going on, especially. You sell like pancakes and bacon, and people will be like, "Oh yeah, I got the munchies. I want something to eat." And they'll just like grab a plate as they walk by and hand you some money. Let them, and it's just nice for the chapter to get together too. So it's kind of a social event. You make a little bit of money. Maybe it's not a whole lot, but I mean, who couldn't use a couple extra $100? So.
I caution you about this, and I didn't even think about it, but again, it's those campus regulations. If you're going to do it on campus, the food police are probably going to get you. It's either your catering or the health department. So however you deal with those, or ask for forgiveness once you did it.
I've never heard of it until initiation or whatever, but we do something, I think they call it like lifeboat scenario or something like that. Anyways, I guess that's like our symbol. So they get a teacher from each of the schools, like arts and science or engineering, and they have to go in front of the school or whoever, like I guess tickets like $5 or something. And each of the schools like select a teacher, and the teacher has to say like why in like post-apocalyptic scenario, why education would like be the best thing, or why engineering would be the best thing, or why business or something like that. So cool.
Other ideas, thoughts? Yes.
At our chapter, we did a lot of restaurant fundraising. So we'd have restaurants or like, you know, easy places like Noodles and Company, or like there's this place called Crazy Kebab that just came onto our campus that a lot of people love to go to all the time. They're nice, easy food. The owners really like to have college kids have restaurant fundraisers. So everybody would get like a code or a flyer that they present while they order their food, and a percentage of those proceeds would go to your organization. So you would flyer right outside and just hand it to people.
And how much were the percentages?
I think one of them was 10, the other one was 20. So
Yeah.
it's not too bad. We made
So,
a couple hundred
Yep.
in one night.
If any of you live in large cities that have professional teams, they often hire groups to do concessions or other things, parking sometimes. If you're in large cities,
My advisor told me about a previous chapter who the best fundraiser they ever came up with. It took a lot of planning, but they rented out they didn't rent out. They got a local business because we live near an uptown, like it's a downtown normal kind of nice area. They got them to donate like their bar space for a night, and then had like local bands, like students at the university, go play there for free, and then like charging like $5 at the door for the kids for the rest of the campus to get in and like just have a fun night. But it'd be like donated to Mortarboard, so it's like a Mortarboard hosted event that we get money for and raises visibility to the campus.
great. So questions?
Oh, I have another one. We did
Are you going to hula hoop?
well, actually, yeah, this was a different group that I joined after I won the talent show, but we did a talent show, and it requires a lot more planning, but a lot of businesses are totally willing, like local ones, to offer free stuff, and then we make a lot of money at the door from ticket sales, and we can offer a cash prize, so more people want to enter, and then we can charge people to enter.
And those are good things. If you're in larger cities, I came from a small city, and unfortunately when you're in a small city and you've got 100 groups, it's much harder to hit up the local businesses. But if you're in a large city, definitely take advantage of that community and make those relationships with the businesses and see if there isn't something you can provide that give them some help, like maybe more clientele in the restaurant because you're advertising for them. So we want to end with a few tips about, evaluating. We talked up front about budgeting, which you're all going to do when you get home. But those of you particularly that are off campus are going to have to do something to have oversight on your books. So your treasurer must keep records, current records, and receipts of everything that happens, particularly if you're off campus. If you're on campus and you're getting funding through your campus somehow business office, you're going to be required to submit those receipts. Audit. If you're going through the business office on campus, some of the business offices, I was amazed when I was doing some research, they require an audit once a month. Some of them, the least amount you'll get by with is once a year. You'll have to have an audit on your account. If you're off campus, you should set up that audit procedure internally as well and audit the books occasionally. This is Mortarboard, but we have had a few chapters where the treasurer and the money disappeared. So, you just need to be aware of your finances because you want to leave next year's chapter in better shape than you came in.
I just wanted to make sure that we got Elizabeth's question answered.
Yeah, that's great for me. I was
Okay.
just curious as to how it worked out. Just because I know like our commencement is a week after everyone's gone. And so from how I was trying to picture it, it seemed like it was mainly reaching everyone who was leaving, which
Yeah.
I mean, for fundraising, it's great, but I don't know, like, if our underclassmen would be around to help do the fundraiser and do flowers, and how it would reach. I like the idea of the scholarships.
Yeah.
And one thing that you can do is help advertise it on campus and say, you know, Mortarboard will be there selling flowers at graduation. So if you're going to be there or your family, let them know. And that way you get some visibility ahead of time for those students that are leaving.
Yeah, that might be a thing too, that regionally is easier if you're a regional institution, because we just require our new members to be there for commencement. We don't have a week in between, but they stay through commencement, so they're kind of a captive staff that way. But the institution that my daughter just graduated from, there was a whole week in between finals and
For some people, it's
commencement.
almost 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So that's another one of those contextual things to think about.
If your
Is
school
it-
has a lot of legacy people, though, that can help too. Like Vanderbilt has a lot of like siblings and stuff, so if your school's like that, it could get like their siblings or something like that later.
Yeah.
I was just gonna tell you, I know like our school does the flowers and whatnot, and our commencement it's the weekend of finals, so everyone's already gone. So the problem that we ran into is that we didn't have any bodies, because all the juniors are now seniors and they want to go home.
Yeah.
Like they weren't there, so I did it, and one of my e-board members did it, and for 2 people to do it at a school where there's 15,000 people, it's a little overwhelming. So my advice to you is if you want to do it, just make sure you have people like who are really going to be there, like someone who maybe is around town and whatnot, because we ran into a serious problem with not having anybody to help.
And we talked to that other company that was here that had those flowers out there, and they said they take care of everything, and it's
Like they give you people to help you, so like our chapter, I think we're gonna talk and figure out, because that for us, I think is gonna be a better option, just because it'll give you manpower.
Yeah.
And we 2 people can't sell flowers to a graduating class that size.
Now, I think that's a great contrast because, you know, if your chapter is going to be there, it's a great experience for your chapter.
Right.
If they're not, then,
It's a problem.
yeah. Comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I don't know about the other companies, but we have an extended contract with Blossom Express, and the percentages improve the longer you stay with the company of how much money you get to keep. So that's something to consider with the other company as well, if they offer that incentive.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got some personal associations with them, and they've been wonderful to do business with. So,
How many of you had an officer transition of any kind? Okay, and how many of you had a treasurer go with you to exchange the signature on your checks, on your accounts? How many of you just have one signature on your account? You might want to look into these things. That can help preserve your funds considerably.
okay, thank you.
Thank the presenters, guys.